There are two cops on my lawn. One is old, with a mustache that's seen more things than I have, and a belly that's straining the limits of modern textile engineering. The other is young, a rookie with a haircut you could set your watch to and an expression of profound, earnest confusion. Between them and my front door stands Carol, a woman I've affectionately nicknamed the Beige Baroness, and she is pointing a trembling, accusatory finger not at me, but at my prize-winning azaleas. "He's running an illegal data smuggling operation, officer," she declares, her voice a high-pitched whine that could peel paint. "The wiring is a flagrant violation. It's unsightly, unpermitted, and a danger to us all." The older cop, whose name tag reads Miller, lets out a sigh that seems to carry the weight of every bad decision ever made in this cul-de-sac. "Ma'am, we've been over this. It's a cable." "It's a menace," she insists. I lean against my doorframe, taking a sip of my rapidly cooling coffee. "Morning, officers. Carol? To what do I owe this early morning congregation of civic-minded individuals?" The rookie, Kinski, flips open his notepad. "Sir, we've received a complaint regarding unpermitted infrastructure on your property." Infrastructure, I repeat, savoring the word. I like that. It sounds important. Are we talking about the bird bath? Because I can assure you the Wrens filed all the necessary paperwork. Carol's face tightens into a prune. "He's mocking me. He's mocking the law." This whole surreal tableau started, as most of my problems do, with Carol and her unshakable belief that she is the sole arbiter of good taste and public order. It began 4 hours ago, with a knock on the door that was less a friendly rap and more a percussive assault. I'd opened it to find her standing there, clipboard in hand, eyes narrowed at the thick, black coaxial cable that ran from the side of my house, hugged the foundation, and disappeared into a reinforced, climate-controlled shed in my backyard. My shed. My sanctuary. My place of employment. "Mr. Vance," she'd said, skipping any pleasantries. "Leo," I'd corrected. She'd ignored me. "Your wire," she'd said, the word dripping with disdain, "is in clear violation of the Oakwood Creek Estate's covenants, conditions, and restrictions. Section 4, subsection B, paragraph 7. All external utility conduits must be buried or otherwise concealed from public view." "First," I'd said, leaning against the doorframe in what I was beginning to realize was my default conversational stance. "That's a high-bandwidth, shielded coaxial cable, not a wire. And second, it's been there for 6 years. The previous HOA president, Bill, a lovely man who was more concerned with the annual chili cook-off than with minor aesthetic infractions, had no problem with it." "Bill was derelict in his duties," she sniffed. "I am not. The cable is an eyesore. It brings down the entire aesthetic uniformity of the cul-de-sac." It's a black cable running along a brick foundation, partially obscured by bushes. You'd need a surveyor's transit and a burning hatred for joy to even notice it. I took a sip of my coffee. "Besides, it's important." "Important how?" she challenged, her pen poised over her clipboard like a dagger. This was the tricky part. I couldn't exactly say, "Oh, that? That's just the backup transmission line for the regional emergency broadcast system. If a hurricane, terrorist attack, or zombie apocalypse takes out the primary hub downtown, this little shed becomes the voice of God for about 100 square miles. So, hands off. People get weird when you tell them you have FEMA-grade hardware in your backyard." So, I went with my usual vague but technically true explanation. It's a vital piece of, let's call it internet art. It represents the fragile yet beautiful interconnectedness of our modern world. It's a high-bandwidth data conduit for, remote server maintenance and advanced cloud-based synergistic solutions. Her eyes glazed over at synergistic solutions. It was my go-to jargon grenade for situations like this. "It's unsightly," she repeated, her one and only point of order. "You have 24 hours to have it removed, or you will be fined." "Carol, with all due respect, that cable is not going anywhere. It's more important to this neighborhood's well-being than matching mailboxes." "We'll see about that," she'd said, a dark promise in her eyes. "I will not have my authority flouted. The cable will be dealt with." She'd turned and marched back to her own beige and taupe palace across the street, the very picture of righteous indignation. I'd shaken my head, finished my coffee, and promptly forgotten about it, because who in their right mind wages a holy war over a cable? An hour later, I was on a Zoom call for my other job, the boring, soul-crushing data entry gig that paid the mortgage and kept me supplied with high-end coffee beans. I was listening to my boss, Brenda, a different, far less threatening Brenda than the one brewing in the Atlantic, drone on about quarterly reports when a flash of movement outside my window caught my eye. It was Carol. She was marching across my lawn with a purpose I hadn't seen since a squirrel tried to make off with one of her prize-winning petunias. And in her hand, glinting in the midday sun, was a massive pair of garden shears, the kind you use for hacking through thick branches. I felt a strange sense of detached disbelief. She wouldn't. She couldn't. Oh, she could, and she did. I watched, mesmerized, as she located the cable where it ran alongside my air conditioning unit. She positioned the shears, took a deep breath, and with a grunt of triumphant effort brought the handles together. Snip! On my desk, my two 4K monitors, my laptop, and my tablet all went blank simultaneously. The Wi-Fi icon on my phone vanished. My digital world ceased to exist. In the sudden, profound silence of my office, I could hear a bird chirping outside. It sounded obscenely cheerful. But I wasn't angry. Oh no, I was flooded with a feeling of pure, unadulterated cosmic glee. Because while the internet was down, I knew something else was happening. In my backyard shed, a small, unassuming red LED on a server rack labeled Phoenix, primary link status, had just switched from a steady green to a blinking red. The main artery had been severed. The region was flying blind. And Carol, the beige baroness, HOA president, and neighborhood menace, had just handed me the biggest, most beautiful "I told you so" moment in human history. My phone, which still worked as a phone, thank God, buzzed. The caller ID was a custom one I'd set up years ago. "Dave, emo, panic mode." I let it ring a second time, just to savor the moment. Then I answered, putting on my most concerned voice. "Dave, my friend, what's up?" His voice came through, tinny and vibrating with the energy of 1,000 stressed-out squirrels. "Leo, it's gone. The primary link is down. Red all across the board. We're blind. What's happening? Did a solar flare hit? Is it the Russians? Tell me it's not the Russians." I strolled to the window and looked at Carol, who was now marching triumphantly back to her own yard, shears held high like a trophy. "No, Dave, not the Russians," I said, a slow smile spreading across my face. "Something far more dangerous, something far more local." I paused for dramatic effect. "Dave, I think we have a Carol situation. Back on my front lawn, the tableau is reaching peak absurdity." "So let me get this straight, ma'am," Officer Miller says, his voice a low rumble of infinite patience. He points a thumb at the cleanly severed ends of the thick black cable lying inert on the grass. "You're telling us you cut this cable?" "It was a flagrant violation," Carol insists, her voice rising. "He refused to comply. He was insolent." "Insolent," I repeat, nodding thoughtfully. "Guilty as charged, officer. My insolence knows no bounds. You should see how I talk to my Roomba." Officer Kinski, the rookie, scribbles this down. "Talks to Roomba." He looks up, his face a mask of professional seriousness. "Sir, can you explain the purpose of this installation?" I put a hand to my chin, affecting a look of grave concern. "I'd love to, officer, but it's sensitive. It involves encrypted photon streams and, interdimensional data transfers. Very top-secret stuff, you know how it is. National security. I could tell you, but then, well, you know." I give him a subtle wink. Kinski's eyes widen slightly, Miller's mustache twitches, and he pinches the bridge of his nose so hard I think he might leave a dent. "Son," he groans, "I'm 2 years from retirement. My pension can't handle interdimensional data transfers. Don't make this harder than it has to be." "Look," I say, dropping the act and turning serious. For a moment. "All I can tell you is that this is a critical piece of privately managed public utility infrastructure. And she, in her infinite wisdom, and with the help of what appears to be a pair of heavy-duty bypass loppers, destroyed it. That's vandalism, destruction of property, possibly even a federal offense, depending on which statute you read. The fines are juicy." I let that hang in the air. The words federal offense have a magical effect. Carol sputters. Kinski stops writing and looks at Miller, who just looks tired. "It's a civil matter," Miller finally declares, his voice heavy with the finality of a man who just wants to go get a donut. "We can't arrest her for cutting a wire on your property in what is essentially a neighborhood dispute. But ma'am," he says, turning to Carol, "do not, under any circumstances, touch his property again. Are we clear?" Carol looks like she just swallowed a hornet. She gives a curt, angry nod. "Good." Miller turns to me. "And you, sir? Try to keep your photon streams to yourself." They turn and walk back to their patrol car, leaving me and Carol standing in a silent, tense standoff across the yard. Her face is a thundercloud of impotent rage. My victory is so sweet I can almost taste it. I give her a jaunty little wave, a smile plastered on my face, before turning to go back inside. The war has just begun, and it's time for me to escalate. Drastically. Inside, I don't bother trying to splice the cable. That would be too easy, too reasonable. Carol didn't want a war. She wanted compliance. But she started a war, and my policy on war is that there is no such thing as too much. I sit at my desk, pull up a fresh document, and title it Project Overkill. The plan is simple. I will not just replace the cable. I will use Carol's complaint as the justification for the most ridiculously over-engineered, ostentatious, and gloriously ugly utility installation this suburb has ever seen. It will be a monument to spite. It will be a masterpiece. My phone, now connected to a mobile hotspot, becomes my baton, and I am the conductor of a symphony of absurdity. My first call is to a company called Trench Diggers, Inc. A gruff voice answers. "Sal speaking." "Sal, my man. Leo Vance here. I have a project for you. I need a trench dug, about 50 feet long, from the side of my house to my backyard shed." 50 feet? A foot deep? Easy. Be done in an hour? $500. Excellent. Now for the details. I don't want the excavated dirt hauled away. I want it carefully mounded into a decorative berm, running parallel to the trench. There's a pause. "A berm. A berm," I confirm. "And on this berm I want you to plant a row of cacti, something sharp. Prickly pears, maybe, or a nice golden beryl. Something that sends a clear, pointy message about respecting personal property boundaries." "You want me to plant cacti on a dirt pile?" "Precisely. Can you handle that?" I can hear Sal scratching his head through the phone. "Yeah, for a price. This ain't my usual gig, but dirt is dirt. Cacti are cacti." Next, I call Reliable Electric. A cheerful woman named Brenda answers. I flinch but soldier on. Brenda, hi, Leo Vance. I need to have about 50 feet of conduit run. No problem, sir. What kind of conduit? PVC? Flexible? I'm thinking 3-inch diameter, rigid galvanized steel, I say, reading from a spec sheet I just pulled up online for an Arctic oil pipeline. I need it buried in the trench, but where it comes out of the ground at either end, I want it painted. Specifically, I want it painted safety yellow. And over the yellow, I want 4-inch wide diagonal black stripes, for visibility. The cheerful silence on the other end is deafening. Sir, you want your conduit to look like a radioactive bumblebee? That is the exact aesthetic I'm going for, yes. Okay, we can do that. We're going to have to special order the paint. My final call is to a man known only as Concrete Joe. He answers the phone with a gravelly, "Yeah?" "Joe, it's Leo. I have a job that requires your unique talents. I need 2 small concrete pads poured, 4 by 4 feet, 8 inches deep, reinforced with rebar." "All right, what for? Hot tub, generator?" "Guard towers," I say deadpan. Another pause. Joe is a man of few words, but his silences are eloquent. Guard towers. That's right. Small decorative ones, at either end of the cable run, to stand sentinel. I'm thinking maybe 4 feet high, built of cinder block, just to protect the integrity of the installation. You want me to pour 2 pads for tiny cinder block towers, to guard a wire. A cable, I correct him gently. A very, very important cable. And the towers aren't just for guarding. They're symbolic. They represent vigilance. Vigilance, Joe repeats, the word sounding alien in his gruff voice. Kid, whatever you're paying, I'll pour the concrete. What you put on top of it is your business. Within hours, the cul-de-sac transforms from a quiet suburban street into a bustling construction site. Sal from Trench Diggers Inc. arrives with a mini excavator that roars to life, tearing a neat scar across my perfect lawn. Pickup trucks from Reliable Electric and Concrete Joes pull up, their occupants getting out, scratching their heads, and conferring with me over my hand-drawn, crayon-embellished schematics for Project Overkill. Across the street, I can see the curtains of Carol's living room window twitching frantically. Her beige fortress has become a sniper's nest of disapproval. I give another jaunty wave. She doesn't wave back. As my glorious, spite-fueled project takes shape, the world outside my little drama is getting serious. On the news channel playing silently in my kitchen, Tropical Storm Brenda has been officially upgraded. She is now Hurricane Brenda, a Category 2 monster, and her projected path has her aiming straight for us. The cheerful meteorologists have been replaced by serious-looking journalists standing in front of weather maps that are angry swirls of red and orange. The first glitchy emergency alerts start to hit people's phones. The infamous, jarring ee tone cuts through the air, followed by a garbled text message. My neighbor's phone apparently displayed, "This is a test, high winds, shelter, with a 3-for-1 deal on tacos." The system is failing. My phone buzzes. It's Dave, again. "Leo, what is going on over there? I'm getting reports of heavy machinery at your address. Are you under attack?" "Relax, Dave," I say over the roar of the mini excavator. "I'm just making some necessary infrastructure upgrades. Aesthetic upgrades. You'd be amazed at the poor quality of the initial installation." Aesthetic upgrades? Leo, the governor, is about to declare a state of emergency. The National Weather Service is predicting a 10-foot storm surge. We have no way of telling people. Patience, my friend. These things take time. The contractors are hitting some unforeseen obstacles. I look at Sal, who is trying to figure out how to arrange the cacti on the berm for maximum dramatic effect. We're having a very spirited debate about form versus function. "I don't care about form," Dave screams, his voice cracking. I need function. I need the link. And you'll have it, I say calmly. But it's going to be a much more robust and visually intimidating link when I'm done. Trust me. Meanwhile, the Oakwood Creek Estates HOA Facebook group, a digital cesspool of passive aggression and lost cat photos, is on fire. Brenda S. posted, "Did anyone else's emergency alert just try to sell them a Kia? Is this normal? Feeling scared? #Hurricane Brenda." Tom P. commented, "Mine said something about a flash flood and then showed me a video of a cat playing a piano. The government is useless." Carol naturally weighs in, her digital voice as imperious as her real one. Carol M. commented, "This is precisely the kind of government incompetence I've been warning about. This is why a strong, well-funded HOA is essential for maintaining community standards and safety. Your HOA board is working tirelessly to ensure all street signs are properly secured ahead of the storm." I can't resist. I log in and drop a little bomb into the comment thread. Leo V. commented, "That's so strange. It's almost as if a critical piece of the local communications network, something vital for transmitting those alerts, was, I don't know, deliberately and maliciously severed earlier today. Just a thought. Stay safe, everyone." My comment immediately gets a dozen likes and love reacts. The digital tide is turning. Tom P. replies, "Wait, what?" Leo V. "What do you know?" I log off smiling. The seeds of chaos have been sown. My trench is dug. My conduit is laid. My concrete is curing. And out on the ocean, Hurricane Brenda is gathering her strength, getting ready to make her grand entrance. Night falls, not gently, but like a hammer. The sky, which had been a bruised purple, turns a malevolent black. The first of Hurricane Brenda's outer bands hit us with the force of a physical blow. The wind doesn't just howl, it screams, a high-pitched, tearing sound that gets inside your bones. Rain comes down in blinding, horizontal sheets, driven by gusts that make the big oak tree in my front yard groan in protest. Then, with a final, apologetic flicker, the power grid gives up the ghost. The entire cul-de-sac is plunged into an inky, primordial darkness, punctuated only by the strobing flashes of lightning that reveal a world gone mad. The primary emergency broadcast system is a corpse. The secondary systems that rely on the main grid are dead too. The region, with its hundreds of thousands of souls, is flying blind into the teeth of a Category 3 hurricane. Real, palpable fear hangs in the air, thicker than the storm clouds. In her garage, illuminated by the cold, sterile light of a half-dozen battery-powered lanterns, Carol is holding her emergency HOA meeting. It's a pathetic sight. Only 3 of our neighbors have braved the storm to attend. The Hendersons, a timid elderly couple, and Gary from down the street, a man whose primary personality trait is owns a riding lawnmower. They sit in lawn chairs, looking terrified, as Carol stands before a whiteboard, delivering a presentation on the importance of securing garbage can lids and bringing in lawn gnomes. "As you can see from this diagram," she says, tapping the whiteboard with a dry erase marker, "improperly secured gnomes can become dangerous projectiles in winds exceeding 50 miles per hour. Our community's aesthetic and safety are at stake." Mrs. Henderson raises a trembling hand. "But Carol, what about the storm? We haven't gotten any updates. We don't know where it's going or how bad it will be. The alerts aren't working." Carol's face tightens. This is an unwelcome deviation from her carefully planned agenda. "As I mentioned on the Facebook group," she says with strained patience, "that is a failure of government infrastructure. It is completely beyond our control. But what is in our control is our immediate environment. Now, let's move on to the proper way to board up windows to prevent property value loss from unsightly plywood." She's so wrapped up in her own petty kingdom she can't see the real storm raging, both outside her garage and within her own community. She is a captain rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic, convinced the real danger is a scuff mark on the railing. My world, in contrast, is an oasis of calm, controlled power. The phoenix's nest, my backyard shed, is humming with life. The server racks, bathed in the cool blue glow of their status lights, are powered by a beefy, uninterruptible power supply that could keep a small hospital running for a week. The air inside is cool and smells faintly of ozone and electricity. The contractors, lured by a hazardous duty bonus that could fund a small nation's GDP, had finished the crucial part of Project Overkill just before the storm hit. The new, thick, beautiful, ugly cable runs from my house to the shed, nestled safely inside its garish yellow conduit, buried beneath the cactus-lined berm. The guard towers are just piles of cinder blocks for now, but the artery is secure. I sit in my command chair, a worn-out leather office chair that has molded to my form over thousands of hours. I'm wearing a professional-grade headset, the kind news anchors use. A can of cold, crisp soda sweats onto a coaster beside my keyboard. On the main monitor, I have a direct, hard-wired feed from the National Weather Service, displaying a terrifyingly beautiful map of the hurricane. I have real-time data. I have the truth. And now I have the means to broadcast it. It's time. My heart is pounding, a mixture of adrenaline, civic duty, and a healthy dose of pure, unadulterated spite. This is for every passive-aggressive note, every condescending comment, every moment of petty tyranny Carol has inflicted upon this neighborhood. This is for Bill and his chili cook-off. This is for the soul of the suburbs. I take a deep breath, my fingers hovering over a panel of large, chunky, immensely satisfying toggle switches. They are old-school, military-grade hardware designed to be used by a shaking hand in a crisis. My fingers find the switch labeled Regional Broadcast Override. Click. The next switch is labeled Phoenix System. Activate. Clack. The final, largest switch is a big red one, covered by a clear plastic safety cap. The label simply reads, Transmit. I flip up the cap. I take one last sip of soda. I press the switch. Thunk. In an instant, the world changes. In Carol's garage, her battery-powered lantern, her tablet, Mr. Henderson's pocket radio, and Gary's cell phone all scream to life with a sound that is not the official EBS tone, but something far more arresting. My voice. It booms from every speaker in a 100-mile radius, cutting through the howl of the wind and the static of fear. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, my voice says, calm, clear, and carrying an unmistakable smirk you could hear through the speakers. This is a test of your patience. It would appear the primary emergency broadcast system has been, well, let's just say it's been snipped out of service by a well-meaning but tragically misguided amateur landscaper. I let that sink in for a beat. But don't worry, the backup is here. My name is Leo, and for the next little while, I'll be your voice of reason in the storm. The good news is, I'm looking at a direct feed from the National Weather Service, and it seems Hurricane Brenda's eye wall is tracking slightly further east than predicted. The eye itself is going to miss us by about 20 miles. A collective sigh of relief seems to ripple through the very airwaves. The bad news, I continue, my tone turning serious, is that we're still deep in the western quadrant of this storm. We're going to be experiencing hurricane-force winds for at least the next 4 to 6 hours. Here is the critical information you should have received hours ago. Do not, I repeat, do not attempt to travel. All major roads, including Interstate 95 and Route 1, are flooded and impassable. Emergency services are overwhelmed. The safest place you can be is in an interior room away from windows. I proceed to give a flawless, professional, and deeply helpful emergency broadcast. I relay wind speeds, shelter locations for those in compromised housing, and clear, concise safety procedures. I read out the list of confirmed power outages and give the utility company's best estimate for restoration, a grim 72 hours minimum. I am the voice of God, and my gospel is meteorology. Back in Carol's garage, the effect is devastating. My voice, my calm, sarcastic, insolent voice, is coming from every device. The Hendersons and Gary are no longer looking at Carol's whiteboard. They are staring at her, their faces a mixture of dawning comprehension and accusation. The connection has been made. The fight over the wire, the construction, my cryptic Facebook post. And now this. Carol's face, illuminated by the glow of her tablet broadcasting my voice, cycles through the 5 stages of grief in about 7 seconds. Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and finally the acceptance of her utter and complete public humiliation. Her face is a mask of sheet-white horror. She has been exposed, in the most dramatic way possible, in the middle of a natural disaster she single-handedly made more terrifying. After relaying all the necessary official information, I know I have to add one final touch. A little something for the home crowd. And now for one final, community-specific safety announcement, I say, my voice softening slightly, becoming more personal, more conspiratorial. This one goes out to the residents of the Oakwood Creek Estates. Please, in this weather, ensure all your garden shears are properly secured. In winds of this velocity, they can become extremely dangerous projectiles. Furthermore, be advised that the willful destruction of what turns out to be federally protected telecommunications infrastructure is a very, very serious offense. Penalties may include significant fines, possible jail time, and, worst of all, being forced to publicly admit you were completely and catastrophically wrong. I pause. This has been a public service announcement brought to you by Spite and a robust backup generator. We now return you to your regularly scheduled but hopefully less intense panic. Stay safe out there. I flip the transmit switch off. The shed falls silent, save for the hum of the servers and the howl of the wind outside. I lean back in my chair, take a long swing drink of my soda, and allow myself a moment of pure, unadulterated satisfaction. The phoenix had risen, and Carol had been roasted. The sun rises the next morning on a world washed clean. The hurricane has passed, leaving behind a neighborhood littered with the detritus of its fury. A thick blanket of leaves, fallen branches, an overturned trampoline in someone's yard, and one of Carol's precious lawn gnomes impaled on a fence post. The air is cool and scrubbed, and the silence is profound. I'm in my front yard, sipping a well-deserved coffee. It's the best coffee I've ever tasted. My lawn is a disaster zone of mud, trenches, and mounds of dirt now topped with sad, leaning cacti. But in the middle of it all, the bright safety yellow of my new conduit pipe peeks out from the ground, a defiant slash of color in the otherwise green and brown landscape. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. A car pulls silently to the curb. It's not a police car or a news van. It's a sleek, black sedan with tinted windows and government plates. 2 people get out. The first is a woman in a sharp, dark pantsuit that somehow looks immaculate despite the surrounding chaos. She radiates an aura of calm, no-nonsense authority. The second person is my boss, Dave, from the emergency management office. He looks like he's aged a decade in the last 24 hours. His hair is sticking up in several directions, and his eyes are wide and bloodshot. The woman in the suit strides across my soggy lawn, her practical shoes barely sinking into the mud. Dave follows her like a weary, defeated puppy. She extends a hand. It's a firm, dry handshake. "Mr. Vance, I'm Agent Thompson, FEMA. Leo, please, I say. Agent Thompson, Dave, you're looking weathered. Dave just groans and makes a noise that sounds like a deflating tire. We've been reviewing the transmission logs from last night, Leo, Agent Thompson says, her voice as crisp as a new dollar bill. The primary link was severed at 14:03 hours. The entire eastern seaboard's EBS hub went dark. You initiated the Phoenix backup system and established a full stable broadcast by 21 o'clock hours. Your script was unorthodox. I wince slightly. Yeah, about the amateur landscaper bit. She holds up a hand. Unorthodox, she repeats, but effective. You disseminated 100% of the critical National Weather Service and state emergency bulletins flawlessly. You updated your broadcast every 15 minutes with new data. The state's psychiatric emergency hotlines reported a significant number of callers who, and I'm quoting the preliminary report here, felt strangely reassured by the sarcastic man on the radio. Dave mutters under his breath. He called me at 2 in the morning to ask if gargoyles were a tax-deductible security expense. National security is no excuse for poor aesthetics, Dave, I say without looking at him. Agent Thompson's lips twitch, the barest hint of a smile. You probably saved lives, Mr. Vance. You definitely prevented widespread panic. The regional director wants to give you a commendation. And the HOA president situation? I ask, unable to help myself. Ah, yes. Agent Thompson's expression becomes steely. The woman in question, a Miss Carol Meller, has become a person of significant interest. The FCC, the Department of Homeland Security, and the FBI are currently in a very spirited, multi-jurisdictional debate over who gets to press charges first. The phrase, destruction of federal interest infrastructure during a declared state of emergency, has been used. Her day is about to get very, very complicated. A feeling of deep, karmic satisfaction warms me from the inside out. As for your Project Overkill, she says, gesturing to the trench and the piles of cinder blocks. Our engineers are fascinated by your schematics. Your use of a cactus berm as a biological deterrent is, apparently, novel. We may have a proposal for you, Mr. Vance. We think the Phoenix system needs to be expanded, and we'd like you to run the program. The story spreads through the neighborhood faster than the floodwaters receded. The legend of HOA Karen who cut the hurricane cable becomes an instant classic, a cautionary tale that will be told to new residents for generations. Carol Mueller goes from being the feared beige baroness to a social pariah overnight. The HOA board, facing a full-scale rebellion from residents who now view my ugly conduit as a symbol of their salvation, holds an emergency meeting. I don't attend, but I hear it was brutal. They force Carol to resign in disgrace. The true moment of reckoning comes 2 days later. I'm watering my new cacti when a different black sedan pulls up in front of Carol's house. A man in a suit, humorless and grim, walks up to her door and serves her with a stack of papers so thick it could stop a bullet. She takes them with a shaking hand, her face the color of ash. Her reign of petty tyranny is officially and federally over. My status, meanwhile, undergoes a dramatic reversal. I am no longer that quiet tech guy with the weird shed. I am Leo, the hero of the hurricane, the man who tamed Brenda, the voice of reason. My neighbors, who had previously either feared Carol or ignored me, now treat me with a reverence usually reserved for visiting dignitaries. The Hendersons bring me a freshly baked apple pie. Gary from down the street drops off a case of craft beer with a note that just says, "Thanks, man." People stop by just to look at the construction site on my lawn, their eyes filled with a newfound respect for my madness. They look at the yellow pipe and the dirt berm not as eyesores, but as a monument to the glorious victory of one man over petty bureaucracy. The contractors returned to finish the job, no longer confused, but filled with a sense of artistic purpose. They're not just completing a project, they are building a landmark. Sal, the trench digger, takes immense pride in arranging the cacti into a formidable, spiky wall. The electricians from Reliable paint the hazard stripes on the conduit with the precision of Renaissance artists. And Concrete Joe, my man of few words, returns with his crew to build the guard towers. They construct them with a level of craftsmanship that is frankly terrifying. As they finish the second one, Sal claps me on the back, his hand like a slab of granite. "You know," he says, surveying their collective work, "I've been doing this for 30 years. Built skyscrapers, bridges, you name it. But this is the job people are going to ask me about for the rest of my life. This is my masterpiece." He gestures to the top of the towers. "You ever find those gargoyles you were talking about?" "They arrive on Tuesday," I say with a grin. I take the job with FEMA. It's officially titled the Decentralized Emergency Communications Initiative, but everyone just calls it the Phoenix Program. It comes with a hefty pay raise, a ridiculous budget, and a mandate to build more small, resilient backyard broadcast hubs just like mine. Best of all, they let me keep my shed as the national headquarters. Project Overkill becomes an official, federally funded installation. The cinder block towers are reinforced and stuccoed. The gargoyles, two magnificent stone beasts I named Static and Feedback, are installed and now stare menacingly toward Carol's house. They're outfitted with real, high-tech security cameras. The cacti thrive. Months later, life has settled into a new, wonderful normal. It's a peaceful Saturday afternoon. I'm relaxing in a lawn chair in my front yard, sipping a cold beer and admiring my fortifications. A moving truck is parked across the street, in front of Carol's old house. She sold it in a hurry, taking a massive loss just to get out of the neighborhood. A new family is moving in. The dad, a friendly-looking guy in a faded college sweatshirt, wanders over, wiping sweat from his brow. "Hey there," he says, extending a hand. "We're the Millers, just moving in." "Leo Vance," I say, shaking his hand. "Welcome to the neighborhood." His eyes drift from me to the trench, to the yellow pipe, to the twin guard towers topped with snarling gargoyles. He takes it all in, a look of profound curiosity on his face. "So," he says, unable to contain himself. "Gotta ask. Couldn't help but notice the, unique landscaping. Is there a story there?" A slow smile spreads across my face. I take a long, satisfying sip of my beer and gesture to the empty lawn chair beside me. "Oh, there's a story, all right," I say. "Pull up a chair. Let me tell you a story about a woman named Carol, a pair of garden shears, and the weekend I accidentally became the voice of God."